ask you a question. Are you the type of person that at the end of your day, you will look back on the things you did throughout the day or maybe even your checklist? And do you feel or say to yourself that it was not enough? Do you feel as if you fell short throughout the day? If you answered yes, there's a really good chance that maybe you struggle with perfectionism. And what I want to talk about in this week's episode on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists is the yardstick behind you versus the yardstick in front of you, or in other words, progress, not perfection. So, as a recovering perfectionist myself, I can say that I was one of those people that would feel as if I never got enough done. I would have this long list of things to do. And if I didn't get it all done by the end of the day, would I would beat myself up for falling short. And the same would go for like a project that I was working on. If I was doing, say, a podcast, even creating a podcast, was I able to look back on what I created and would I be able to feel like it was enough or good enough? Or did I just constantly push myself and move on to the next thing and feel as if maybe I fell short and didn't get everything done exactly the way I wanted to? What underlies and underpins the need to be perfect and this feeling of falling short, this feeling of not being enough, oftentimes does come from our childhood wounding. I talk about this a lot in my episodes. I talk about it with my guests, and I talk about it in my upcoming book as well. What I want to say is that the very first thing that you need to do if you have this tendency to beat yourself up and to always look at where you're falling short and not measuring up to this, what is probably a very unrealistic high expectation that you're putting on yourself. If you're falling into that pattern, is the very first step is to become aware. We cannot change that which we don't acknowledge. So if you can't even recognize that you put this pressure on yourself, that you have this internal pressure system, is what I call it, is when you're freaking like nonstop chatter in your mind of got to do more, be better, get all the things done right, get it done perfectly, get it done like yesterday. And you hardly ever allow for any space or any grace to make a mistake, to be tired, or if you're not feeling well, if that gets in the way of you getting things done, you can be really hard on yourself and just tell yourself to suck it up, pull up your bootstraps, and just freaking do it. This, I can tell you, is something that I witnessed frequently as a child because my mom put so much pressure on herself to just keep pushing. And she would, at times when she was really sick, like she would struggle with migraines and she would get these migraines that would make her sick to her stomach. And she would still make herself go to work, or she would make herself go and make dinner, or take somebody someplace to a doctor's appointment or something. She was always pushing. And very rarely did she allow herself to just rest and nurture herself and take care of herself. So I watched this was modeled to me that it just wasn't something that you did. You just pushed through no matter what. And so that's a pattern, right? That's a way of thinking or believing that you have to just keep pushing and you have to be perfect. So the first step is to recognize and be aware if you are falling into this pattern of expecting perfection. If you focus more on the outcome and the perfection rather than progress, that's the issue. That's the problem. So the first step is being able to recognize. And then the second step is being able to own and take responsibility for making any changes. There's no one that's out there. There's no one on the outside that's going to say to you, or let's say to me, Kim, why don't you just take a break? Why don't you give yourself a rest? Or you've been working so hard and you just need to be gentle on yourself. Like people just aren't going to freaking do that for me or for you. So we have to learn how to A, take responsibility, and then B, we have to be the nurturer. We have to be the one to show up for our wounded little child inside of us, because that's the part. That is the part of us that is struggling so much. That's the part that feels that she has to be perfect. It's that wounded self. So we as adults need to now come in and say, no, it's okay. If you're sick, take a break, rest. If you are exhausted, if you are overwhelmed, if you're stressed, just take a breath, take a moment to just breathe, be gentle, be compassionate. And that's the third step is once you take ownership, second step is ownership because you're the one who has to do it. The third step is actually doing the healing work. And that's part of the healing work is going in and reframing, reparenting the inner child, learning the skill of offering self-compassion and gentleness and grace. Because at the end of the day, if we take care of ourselves and if we focus on progress and not perfection, and if we're gentle and compassionate and we learn how to pace ourselves, in the end, we most likely will accomplish more, do a better job on that project. We'll be more likely to keep up with our exercise routine or our eating habits or whatever it is that we're trying to grow in our lives. We're going to have much better outcome if we do have grace, if we do have compassion for ourselves, and if we come from a place of flow and abundance rather than from a place of lack and scarcity. Like, I have to do this, I have to be perfect, and I can't fall short. I cannot fail. I can't fail at anything, at life. And when we are in that place of lack and scarcity, and you might actually resonate with this, is that we often find ourselves in this place of overwhelm and stress because we're taking on so much. We take on everything and we expect ourselves to manage all the parts of our lives perfectly. So maybe one part is managing your money and balancing your checkbook, not going into debt. It could be that you're exercising, you're trying to maintain your weight, you want to eat healthy, you're trying to do a really good job at your job for your boss, you're wanting a raise, you're trying to, if you're a parent, you're trying to be a good mom or a good dad, you're trying to provide for your family, you're trying to get ahead and save money and buy the house and travel and doing all the things and doing them all perfectly. It's freaking exhausting when we put all this pressure on ourselves and expect to be perfect at everything all the time. And that's why in this episode, I really want to emphasize the part about progress and not perfection, grace, compassion, and gentleness. Now, I will be 100% honest with you. And I will tell you that for years, I struggled to be that way with myself. I struggled to have compassion. I struggled to be gentle because that pattern of perfectionism was so freaking ingrained. And it still shows up for me. I am not going to lie to you. It is still there. And I can still fall into the habit and the pattern of being a human doing rather than a human being. The difference is that today, because I practice and I work at it, that I recognize, I become aware very quickly when that pattern shows up, that I'm trying to be a human doing and not a human being, and I'm putting that pressure on myself. And I know the steps now. And so I can pause, the power of the pause. And I can recognize, okay, that's what I'm doing to myself. Now let me just breathe. Because at the end of the day, when I look at the things that I'm putting pressure on myself, is there anything there that is life altering? Is there anything that is earth shattering that if I don't do it, something horrible is going to happen? And almost all the time, it's no, right? It's not. Okay, if I don't exercise as much or as often in one particular week, okay, next week or tomorrow, or just pick right up the next day. So most of the time, it's if I have to let something go, let go a little bit on a particular area in my life so that I can focus on a different particular area of my life, it's okay. There are times when I could be really busy. Like right now, I'm writing this book. So I'm very consumed in the writing process of the book, which means that I don't have as much energy and bandwidth for some other parts of my business. And that's okay because I'm not going to be writing the book forever. That will come to an end. And then I'll be able to pick up on the other areas. Or let's say I recently did have COVID at the beginning of March, and it's been taking a while to get back to my normal. So I'm not able to exercise as intensely as I was before. And that's okay. I'll get there. So again, there's that gentleness, there's the compassion and grace, and it's about progress. So more than anything, what I hope that this episode helps you with is that I hope I'm giving you the opportunity to give yourself permission to take some of that pressure off of yourself. If you struggle with perfectionism, and I'm going to guess you do because you're listening to this podcast, which is Masks Off for people pleasers and perfectionists, you know what I'm talking about. You resonate with what I said, parts of what I said, all of what I said in this episode. So you know what I'm talking about. And you probably have been there or are still there. And so, what I'm hoping that this episode will do is give you the permission to focus on your progress, not perfection. Look at the yardstick behind you rather than the yardstick in front of you. Look at all that you are doing, are accomplishing. And I bet it's amazing because I'm sure that you are doing your best. We are all just doing our best. I do hope this was helpful. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to comment, ask questions, give me feedback, or just leave a review. And I will see you next time on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. And don't forget that if you are wondering whether you are a people pleaser or a perfectionist, I have a quiz on my website, which is kimgrosscoaching.com, and go check it out.